The name tag slipped from my trembling fingers and landed face down on the polished hotel floor just as the room erupted into laughter behind me. Sunlight poured through the giant ballroom windows, casting golden reflections across crystal glasses and white linen tables, but all I could feel was the heat crawling up my neck as dozens of strangers stared in my direction. The young woman who had checked everyone in looked confused, almost apologetic, as she pointed toward the last empty seat in the crowded singles mixer. Sitting there alone was a woman at least 20 years older than me, quietly stirring her untouched coffee while couples around her exchanged smiles and flirtatious glances. A few men near the bar chuckled under their breath, already assuming they understood the joke life had played on me that afternoon. But none of them knew what was about to happen next, and by the end of that day, not a single person in that ballroom would ever forget my reaction. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and judging people by their hearts instead of appearances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need hope today. The mixer had been organized at one of the oldest hotels in the city, a beautiful daytime event filled with soft piano music, fresh flowers, and nervous people pretending not to be nervous. I had almost turned my car around 3 different times before arriving because blind social gatherings were never my thing. At 32 years old, I had spent most of my adult life buried in work after my fiancé left me 4 years earlier for someone wealthier and more successful. That heartbreak had changed me in ways I never admitted out loud. It made me quieter, more guarded, and painfully aware of how quickly people judged each other based on shallow expectations. Still, my younger sister insisted I needed to stop isolating myself, and after months of pressure, I finally agreed to attend the mixer for one afternoon. The moment I entered the ballroom, I regretted it. Everywhere I looked, people were performing polished versions of themselves. Men straightened expensive jackets while women laughed a little too loudly at jokes that were not funny. Everyone seemed desperate to appear interesting, successful, or desirable. I stood near the entrance for several minutes wondering if I could quietly disappear before anyone noticed me. Then the hostess smiled warmly and handed me a card with a table number written in blue ink. Table 17. When I found the table, I noticed immediately that it was different from the others. Most tables were filled with younger pairs leaning forward in eager conversation, but table 17 sat near the tall windows overlooking the busy city streets below. Only one chair was occupied. The woman seated there wore a simple green dress and had silver streaks running through her dark hair. Fine lines framed her face, but there was something calm and dignified about her posture, something untouched by the insecurity filling the room. She looked up when I approached, and for a brief second, I caught sadness in her eyes before she quickly covered it with a polite smile. I could already hear whispers from nearby tables. They ran out of matches for him. That's awkward. Poor guy. The comments sliced through the room like tiny knives. I saw the hostess rushing toward us, clearly embarrassed by what had happened, probably ready to separate us and fix the pairing mistake before things became more uncomfortable. But something inside me stopped her before she even reached the table. Maybe it was the exhaustion of seeing people reduced to numbers and appearances. Maybe it was the look on the woman's face, a look that said she had experienced this humiliation before. Or maybe it was because I suddenly realized she was the only person in the room not pretending to be someone else. So instead of walking away, I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. The ballroom became strangely quiet. The woman blinked in surprise, almost as if she expected me to reject her like everyone else apparently had before. Up close, I noticed tiredness behind her gentle expression, the kind of tiredness carried by someone who had survived many disappointments without letting bitterness destroy them. Her name was Celeste. And within the first 10 minutes of conversation, she completely changed my understanding of loneliness. Unlike everyone else at the mixer, Celeste did not speak in rehearsed lines or exaggerated stories meant to impress strangers. She spoke honestly. She told me she was 56 years old and had spent most of her life caring for other people. She had raised two younger brothers after her parents died, worked double shifts as a nurse for decades, and eventually became caretaker to her husband during his long battle with cancer. By the time he passed away 3 years earlier, her world had become painfully quiet. Her children lived in different states, busy with lives of their own, and the house that once felt warm with family suddenly felt unbearably empty. She admitted she almost did not come to the mixer because she feared exactly what was happening around us. Judgment. Pity. Invisible walls created by age and expectations. As she spoke, the noise of the ballroom faded into the background. I stopped noticing the laughter from other tables. I stopped caring about the whispers. There was something deeply human about her honesty, something raw and refreshing in a world obsessed with surface-level attraction. For the first time in years, I found myself listening instead of performing. Then she asked me a question nobody had ever asked at these events. When was the last time you were genuinely happy? The question hit harder than I expected. I stared out the window toward the bright afternoon traffic below, trying to remember. Work had consumed my life for so long that happiness felt like something belonging to another version of me. I admitted that after my failed engagement, I stopped believing people stayed for the right reasons. I became suspicious of affection and tired of feeling like relationships had become competitions built around status and appearance. Celeste listened without interrupting. No fake sympathy. No rehearsed advice. Just quiet understanding. And somehow, that hurt more than judgment ever could. Hours passed without me noticing. Around us, pairs rotated between tables according to the event schedule, but I never moved. Neither did she. Some people stared openly now, confused by why I stayed. Others seemed irritated, almost offended that I was ignoring the unspoken social rules of the room. One younger man even approached during a break and jokingly offered to trade partners with me. I still remember the way Celeste's face fell before she looked down at her coffee cup again. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I stood up slowly and looked directly at the man in front of everyone. Then I said something nobody expected. I told him that this woman across from me possessed more grace, loyalty, strength, and authenticity than most people in the room combined. I said that while everyone else was busy chasing perfection, they were overlooking the rare beauty of someone who had spent her entire life loving others without asking for attention in return. I said age did not erase a person's worth, and loneliness was not something to laugh at. The room went silent. You could feel the atmosphere change instantly. The man who mocked us looked embarrassed and quietly walked away, but the bigger surprise was the expression on Celeste's face. Her eyes filled with tears she clearly did not expect to shed in public. For several seconds, she could not even speak. She simply covered her mouth with trembling fingers and stared at me as if no one had defended her in a very long time. Outside the ballroom windows, the afternoon sun glowed warmly over the city skyline, but inside, everything felt still. That day did not end with romance the way people might expect. There was no dramatic kiss or fairy tale ending waiting at the hotel doors. What happened was far more meaningful. When the mixer ended, Celeste and I walked together through the outdoor garden behind the hotel. Roses swayed gently in the warm daytime breeze while guests slowly disappeared toward parking lots and taxi stands. She confessed that before meeting me, she had started believing society no longer had room for women like her. Everywhere she looked, aging seemed treated like failure instead of survival. She said people stopped seeing her as a person years ago and started seeing her only as someone past her best years. Hearing that broke something inside me. Because the truth was, I understood that feeling too. Not because of age, but because heartbreak had convinced me I was only valuable when I appeared successful, confident, and emotionally untouched. Somewhere along the way, both of us had learned to shrink ourselves to avoid rejection. But that afternoon changed us. Over the next several months, our friendship grew in ways neither of us expected. We met for coffee during sunny afternoons, walked through weekend street markets, and talked honestly about grief, regret, and healing. Celeste taught me how to slow down and appreciate moments instead of racing endlessly toward achievements that never truly satisfied me. I helped her reconnect with passions she abandoned years earlier, including painting and volunteering at a local library. People misunderstood our relationship constantly. Some assumed I was using her financially. Others assumed she was manipulating me emotionally. The judgment never fully disappeared, but eventually, we stopped caring. Because sometimes the most important relationships in life are the ones that refuse to fit inside society's expectations. One afternoon nearly a year after the mixer, I visited Celeste at a small community art show displaying her paintings for the first time. Sunlight streamed through the gallery windows as strangers admired landscapes she once believed nobody would ever care about. I watched her standing proudly beside her artwork, smiling with a confidence I had never seen in her before, and realized something profound. That singles mixer did not pair me with the wrong person. It paired me with the exact person I needed to meet. Not every life-changing connection begins with attraction. Some begin with compassion. Some begin with understanding, and some begin the moment one human being chooses kindness when everyone else expects rejection. Before we finish this story, take a second to comment where you're watching from and share one thing you believe makes a person truly beautiful beyond appearance. Years later, I still think about that afternoon whenever I pass the old hotel downtown. I remember the laughter, the whispers, and the assumptions people made within seconds of seeing us together. But I also remember something stronger. I remember how quickly cruelty loses power when even one person decides to stand against it. Celeste once told me that loneliness is not about being alone. It is about feeling unseen. And maybe that is why our meeting mattered so much. Because for the first time in years, someone finally saw her. And through her, I finally saw myself too. If this story touched your heart in any way, don't leave quietly. Please like, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes so more people can discover stories that remind us compassion still exists in this world. Your support truly makes a difference. The last time I saw Celeste before she moved closer to her children, she handed me a small painting wrapped carefully in brown paper. It showed two strangers sitting across from each other beside a sunlit window, while the world around them faded into soft colors. On the back, she had written a single sentence that I will carry for the rest of my life. The right people will never make you feel invisible.